Ah, yeah, man, we're back out with some more reaction videos. So we're checking out the top 10 people found now guilty after serving life sentence.
Man.
That is horrible, man.
It's gonna be depressing.
Yeah, it's depressing, man, because like they do this stuff all the time, and then they want to give them a funky $1 million.
Yeah.
And it's probably taxed. If you're gonna get somebody like 20, 30 years in prison, you know what I'm saying? Give them $1 million per year they was in there.
Ooh,
you know what I'm saying?
Dang, that would be a lot of money.
Yeah, hey, they sold their life away.
I mean, yeah,
40 years.
Not saying they don't deserve it.
Yeah, and give it to them tax-free.
Tax-free.
That's what they should do.
That.
You know what I'm
That'd
saying?
be a good idea.
But no amount of money can like bring back their time.
No amount of money can make up for all that time that they've lost. I mean, if they've served a life sentence, then that's like literally probably almost their entire lives.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine.
Yeah, the nerve. $2 million for being there for 40 years, and then you want to give them, then you want to tax it on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely looking forward to checking this out. Before we do, subscribe to the vlog channel. The link's in the description down below.
And check out our Patreon where we do movie reactions. Link is also down below.
That's not right.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Charlie here, and today we're going to be looking at 10 people found not guilty after serving life sentences.
Jeez.
If you do a really serious crime, you will get a life sentence in prison. This is given after people are found guilty for doing their crimes. But many people are wrongly found guilty every single year. Who knows how many people who didn't do a crime will spend their entire life behind bars
that's
for no
scary
reason.
to think about.
Well,
Yeah,
there
it
are
is.
some true stories of people found
Knowing
not
you're
guilty
innocent.
In the
after
wrong
spending
time,
a
yeah, wrong
lifetime
place,
in
wrong
jail.
time.
Some of these are so crazy and will really make you question our justice system.
Oh, yeah.
Before we get
Already
into it,
do.
why not subscribe and press the
Needs to be
notification bell
reformed.
too. Coming in at number 10, we have Lawrence McKinney. Lawrence McKinney is now 60 years old and comes from Memphis, Tennessee. In 1978, he was wrongfully convicted of stealing a lady's TV. According to the prosecution, he also did unspeakable things to the lady. And for this, he was sentenced to 115 years in prison. 15 years for taking the TV and 100 years for the other things. So
they're not saying what the other things
But 15
are,
years just for stealing the TV though?
15 years, right?
31 years later,
For a
in
TV?
2009, new DNA evidence came about. The stunning DNA evidence found Lawrence was not even on the scene. He was released in July of 2009 after 31 years behind bars.
years.
And as compensation after he was released, he was given only $75.
What?
That's right, they took away 31 years
That's a
of his life.
slap in the face, man.
$75?
$75, man. And they probably taxed that too. Oh,
That's nothing.
They pretty said, "Oh, sorry, we took your time. Here's $75."
That's nothing. Holy cow.
No reason, and then gave him $75 to say sorry. At the time, he said he was happy he was released, but he says he has no life. His entire life was taken away.
Yeah.
Now his lawyer is fighting for him to get $1 million compensation. But I think even $1 is not enough for 31 years in prison for no reason. And I can't believe they tried to give him $71
That
and
is
then
a
told
slap.
him to just leave after
That is
taking
horrible,
away 31
man.
years of his life. This is really one of the most terrible stories
Heck
I've
yeah.
ever heard.
Wow.
And I hope Lawrence does get a lot more money in the future, but nothing can give him his life back.
Exactly.
He missed out on
Next
a lot of
up
things.
is Craig Colby. This one took place in California around 40 years ago. In 1978, Craig Colby was accused of taking 2 lives. Those being his 24-year-old girlfriend, Wanda Witch, and also Simi Valley, her 4-year-old son. But in 2018, nearly 40 years later, Craig was acquitted. He was freed after it turned out the district attorney at the time cited false evidence. Now, unlike Lawrence
They do that
McKinney
stuff,
before,
man.
he was given a more decent compensation. He was given $140 for each day he was in prison. But that's still not very good, seeing as he said every day was a living nightmare.
I bet you was.
Also, he's now 70 years old and he went in when he was only 30.
Wow.
This means they've pretty much taken his entire life
Yeah,
away.
they did.
And he'll likely spend more of his life behind bars than free. In total, his compensation was around $2 million. But he spent a ridiculous
million, but that's still not enough.
14,000 days behind bars. He says money nor anything can make up that time
Heck
lost.
no.
Nothing
And it
can.
makes you think how many other people are behind bars for no good reason right now.
The real question is, what they do about their prosecutor? Is he gonna
Yeah,
serve
right.
the time? Is it because how many people?
Did he get any kind of
Yeah.
reprimand? I would
Yeah.
assume he's not a prosecutor anymore, but like
Yeah.
beyond that,
How many cases has he done it to other people?
that's a good point.
That person need to do the exact same amount of time.
They need
You know
to
what
do
I'm
time,
saying?
too.
Not know you're gonna lose your license. Nah, that person need to do time, man. That's horrible.
Next up is Wilbur Jones. Wilbur Jones was sentenced to life in prison in Louisiana in 1971. He apparently kidnapped
They're
and
doing
did
a lot of
terrible
jacked up
things
things
to
in
a
the 70s to
nurse.
people.
He was only 19 years old when he was arrested and given life in jail. And the crazy thing is, the only evidence against him was a police lineup. Wilbur was simply picked out of a police lineup by the nurse. But it turns out the nurse was incorrect and Wilbur had nothing to do with it. At the time, she actually told officers the person who did that to her was actually way taller and had a different voice. But the officers did not care and very controversially sent him to life in prison.
Was probably
the case was very controversial.
She should have said no.
Who says he definitely
You could have messed up somebody's life.
And after they partnered up with the New Orleans Innocent Project, he was found not guilty. He hugged his lawyers and cried as he was finally released out of jail after 50 years. He's now 65 and is said to be very frail and aging.
50.
The nurse he apparently did this to actually passed away in 2008, and the nurse's late husband actually said that he agrees that Wilbur should have been released. Both the nurse and Tim did not agree Wilbur really did it, but it seems some corruption was taking place.
They just wanted somebody.
Wanted to put Wilbur away forever. Luckily he's out now, but he's already had his entire life taken away.
They just so worried about getting a conviction.
Next up is Kirsten Lobato. On the 8th of July 2001, a girl named Kirsten Lobato, who was only 18, was sentenced to life behind bars. In a Las Vegas, Nevada court, she was sentenced to 100 years in prison. They'd claimed that she'd taken the life of an innocent person. That is because they'd found a man who was not alive. Days before this, Kristen was jumped by a similar looking guy at a motel. She was able to defend herself with a knife and the man ran off. That's the last Kristen saw of it and she didn't report it to the police. However, she did tell her friends and one of her friends reported this to the police.
Damn.
They then assumed that the person that she defended herself from was the person who was not alive. And also because she was not sober at the time, they got her to wrongfully confess to what she did. This was the only evidence against her and they didn't have any other key evidence. But after she spent 16 years in prison saying she didn't do it, she was finally found not guilty. It turned out that the guy who she defended herself from had come forward. And the person the police found who was not alive was a totally unrelated thing. Kristen simply defended herself and had nothing to do with taking anyone's life. But sadly it was too late. She'd already spent 16 years in jail. The crazy thing is Kristen had an alibi the entire time, but they didn't believe it.
And they didn't believe
What?
it?
Why do you ask the alibi?
They didn't
believe the alibi.
believe it.
That's
She was
crazy.
only 18 by the time she was sent to prison. She has a whole long life to live. She is nearly 40 now and they did take away a lot of years of her life.
Yeah,
but
a
she
lot.
didn't have it as bad as some other people on this list.
Yeah, she had nowhere near
Nevertheless,
her,
imagine how
but
scary
still
it would be at
bad.
18 being sentenced to life in prison for something you never did.
Gosh.
Next up is Kwame Ajimu. This one took place in Ohio, USA in 1975.
I feel like I've heard
When
of
this man was only
You have?
29 years old, he was sentenced to life in prison. Apparently he'd taken the life of a salesman, but this was not the case. There was a witness statement saying he was there when it happened, but it turned out to be a lie. He was then convinced to testify as they said he's gonna go to jail forever anyway. He spent a crazy 27 years in prison for doing nothing. Under Ohio law, the wrongfully convicted earned $40,000 per year they were in jail. And seeing as he was behind bars for 27 years, that means he gets $1.1 million. But
Still,
nothing
not
would buy
nowhere
out
near
that
enough.
much time, and they really did ruin his life. He was seen bursting into tears when he was finally found not guilty of all
I
charges.
can only imagine
He said he
that
was so
feeling.
happy this battle has come to an end, and he hugged his wife and the judge. I'm not sure how I'd feel if I was him. Happy, sad, or angry?
All
All
of
three?
it? I think you'd feel all of it.
Next up is Ricky Jackson. When Ricky Jackson was just 18, he was sentenced to life in Ohio. He actually joined the Marines at 18, but had to leave as he had a bulky back. Soon after he returned home, Harold Franks had his life taken and they blamed Ricky Jackson. Apparently someone went into his money order store, stole $400, took his life and then fled. They didn't have any good evidence against Jackson. All they had was a statement from a local paperboy who was 12 years old who said he saw Jackson. The jury accepted this 12-year-old's account and Jackson was sentenced to life in jail. At first he was even sent to the electric chair, but luckily 2 years later the sentence was reduced to life. Finally in 2017, all charges against him were dropped. It was found there was no evidence and that he didn't do any crimes.
Jeez.
It's absolutely terrible. They took 40 years of his life away for no good reason. He says he's finally free and is for once enjoying life. But he says it's scary just how easily people can take your entire life from you. And he actually met with the paperboy who put him behind bars and he says he forgives him. That is such a big thing to do, and I can't imagine forgiving someone.
When you're 12-year-old, you don't understand what you're doing.
Jackson is clearly very
but come on, man.
And I'm glad he's
I mean, if he lied, that's all wrong.
Next up is Mark Denny. When Mark Denny was only 17, he was sentenced to life in prison in Brooklyn, New York. Apparently in 1987 he'd robbed someone and done terrible things to them. But after spending 30 years behind bars, he was finally let out. He asked many times for DNA testing, but was rejected.
Really?
But luckily, the Innocence Project stepped in and they got a DNA test.
Innocence
They found
Project
he
be doing a lot of
actually
good
was
things
not
for
responsible
people.
for it whatsoever.
Yeah.
His defense said Mr. Denny has been waiting for this day for a very long time. And to be honest, that's an understatement as he served 30 years for no reason. Next up is Richard Phillips. In 1971, someone took the life of a man named Gregory Harris. His brother-in-law said he saw Richard Phillips near the scene. They believed the brother-in-law, and he was sentenced to life in jail.
Did the brother-in-law have some
Richard
type of
Phillips
vendetta?
didn't
for
do
him?
anything, and when he went into jail, he was 27. Now he's 72, and he was only just let out.
27.
That's right. He spent 45 years
So
in prison
the
for
age
something
reversed.
he didn't do.
27,
Oh,
72.
yeah,
The
that
reason he was let
that's
out is
weird.
because they found the real person who took Gregory's life.
Oh, they
It's
did.
quite crazy. It took them all this time to let this guy out of prison. And if they hadn't have caught the real person behind this, he may
He'd
have
still
still
be
been in
in
prison
there.
for his
Yeah.
entire life. I'm sure that's the case for many people, which is a really sad thought.
It is a sad thought.
Next up is
How
John
many times
Bunn.
do we
When
get it
John
wrong?
was 14, he was sentenced to life in prison in
14?
Brooklyn. Apparently he'd taken the life of an
How?
off-duty officer in Brooklyn. But he's now 41, and after 27 years, his name was finally cleared. He
Jeez.
began crying and hugged
So,
his lawyers
yeah,
and the
I think
judge
I've seen
in
this
court.
clip before.
He says he's been battling his entire life to try and get out of jail. And he said to the prosecutors, "I don't deserve all the things you've done to me." And the crazy thing is, the prosecutors never even apologized. Bunn and his lawyers said it would be very nice to get an apology as he deserves one. And I
Yeah.
think it's terrible that they sent him
They don't
behind
care.
bars for 27 years and
They were
then
about taking
didn't even
eviction
say
record.
sorry.
Yeah.
I hope he gets
Plus, he was
hefty compensation, but
14.
nothing
Like,
to
why
buy
are
back all
you-
that time.
So he probably didn't go until he
Throwing
was
a
18.
14-year-old in jail.
Probably didn't go until he was 18.
But
Yeah.
still.
That was horrible.
It was horrible. I
Yep.
mean, listen, I know that we're all human, we make mistakes, but
Nah,
stop
that's beyond a
doing,
mistake.
like...
This stuff happens a lot
I know.
in America and stuff, man.
Well, and especially, like, it still happens today. But
A lot.
especially, like, back, they used to believe witness testimony,
Yeah,
like,
easily.
a lot. And
Yeah.
now we know that witness
Yeah.
testimony isn't always... And it's not that the witnesses are lying, it's just
Yeah.
that people remember things, misremember things.
Yeah.
So you can't rely on witness testimony
Nah,
like they
sometimes
used
you really
to.
can't.
And now we know.
Yeah, and man, some of these prosecutors, they don't really care because they just want to
They
get a
just wanna
conviction
win.
rate.
Yeah, they
at
just
all
want a
costs,
conviction
man.
rate.
You don't care about like just destroying somebody's whole life.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
They don't. Certain people, they deem certain people not worthy, and they
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
care.
yep. This is definitely crazy to watch, man.
Depressing a little bit.
Yeah, hopefully, more things change.
Hopefully
and
things get
stuff.
better.
I mean, thank God for the Innocence Projects. People that work pro bono,
Yeah,
get people out.
that's a really cool project.
Yeah,
We've
those
seen
people
some
do
stuff on it
noble
before.
things,
They
man.
do some amazing work.
Yeah, but we about to get ready this video. Don't forget to subscribe,
And thumbs it up.
turn on notifications. It's your man, More B.
And Nicole.
I'm gonna catch you on the next video. Awesome. Peace and love.